We need to talk about fake news, especially around politicians and elections. We have elections here again, of course, in 2024, becoming an increasing problem. Also, we just had those being voted in as the top 7 at the ANC conference over the weekend. Now, to prove the point, screen grabs were doing the rounds during the ANC's national conference, allegedly showing that the IEC was involved in rigging votes. Just moments ago, Tumzo heard from Janet Love, IEC vice chair, coming out and vociferously denying any involvement in the ANC elections. And now also, we've been hearing Governance and Traditional Affairs, MEC, Sihle Zikalala, also labelled in a WhatsApp message that seemed to be sent by him as fake news. So he didn't send that, according to him. So how can we actually spot fake news or a fake message? Well, luckily we have Media Monitoring Africa spokesperson Nomshado Lubisi-Nkosinkulu joining us this morning. Nomshado, good to have you on eNCA. And this really is such a difficult thing to try and pick out when you see these messages on social media. But I imagine it's even more difficult on WhatsApp, because WhatsApp is so personal. That's being sent to you by someone that probably knows you and you know them. So how do we know fake news from what's real? Good morning.
Good morning to you too, and thanks for having me. I think, honestly, what we've been seeing for the past few days has emphasized the importance of digital literacy around disinformation, especially when we're going towards, elections. And the reality is, over the years, it has, advanced, it has morphed, it has become more sophisticated to a point where it's very difficult for somebody to actually tell, credible information to counter narratives that were created, obviously, deliberately to cause harm. And I think in this instance, with the screenshots, you got an element of that. You've got somebody's name, which could be easily saved on somebody's phone on a different number, having a conversation with somebody that is not the actual individual, and take a screenshot of that. And obviously it would look quite credible online because it's somebody's profile, it's somebody's name, it's somebody's chats between two people. However, there are various elements that, you need to start looking at, and which is, how's the message constructed? What are the spelling errors? Is this somebody of high profile? Is this how they would usually interact online? Look at the profile pictures and images of the chats themselves. I think you could also see in those ones that the screen wallpaper for the WhatsApp message kind of differs between the two, and it kind of raises red flags to start investigating further. So I think these are just, the intro, narratives that we're starting to see, especially now towards the elections. And I think next year we might be seeing quite more.
If my memory serves correct, what you got is you've got 3 kinds of information, but I want to focus on just 2 of them. One is, the first is misinformation, other disinformation, and then the third is malinformation. I want to talk about misinformation, and Nomshado, and disinformation. Misinformation, if I remember correctly, this is the spreading of fake news, but no intent of harm. Disinformation is the spreading of fake news with the intent to cause harm. Now, when it comes to politics, anything, it seems, that is incorrect or fake could only be seen as a way of trying to cause harm, either to an opposition party, an opposition politician. Is my understanding correct?
It is quite correct. And I think one thing we need to highlight here and emphasize on is that disinformation only thrives through misinformation. So if somebody did create, deliberate content to kind of counteract some sort of narrative, or to paint somebody in a bad picture, or to change people's perception and influence their decision making, if no one reshared that, liked that, interacted with that, there would be no impact on that narrative. So the danger comes in the impact of disinformation and how it's created. At the end of the day, it's to deceive. And I think the difference here needs to be highlighted, that yes, disinformation is created deliberately to cause harm, and misinformation is still causing harm, but without the intention. Malinformation is now me deliberately attacking somebody, whether it's through using their personal information, their occupation, their physique, or etc., or their race. And the differences between that actually emphasizes how it's kind of like a chain, and how disinformation is like an intersection through all of them. But without it being shared, without it being liked, without any interaction around that content, it wouldn't thrive the way it does.
Yeah, I suppose the problem is it is going to thrive the way it does because it is going to be shared, it is going to be liked, it is going to be retweeted and whatever else you do on all these other platforms, because people don't know whether it's fake or not. So I suppose my next question is going to be, how does an ordinary South African that might not have media monitoring Africa's resources, or a trained journalist or a trained analyst, wouldn't know what to look for? What is the average South African who gets this, maybe on social media or a WhatsApp message, how do they begin to check whether it's true or not?
I think the first thing I would start is never take, everything that you see online at face value. Start thinking and taking steps back before you actually interact with the content. At MMA, we have what we call the 5 C's. Look at the content, look at the context, confirm, the sources. Who is it that is sharing this information? And obviously compare it with other narratives as well. And you would have seen that, the one place we always direct people to, it's the media. Verify with media houses, media sources, but most importantly, start looking at what everyone else is saying. Because the danger here as well, I think I'd like to emphasize, is that disinformation is not only shared, by a personal individual sitting behind their phone. It could also be by bots that are created by that individual. So you might see the same narrative 10 times, 15 times, assuming that it's a narrative that everyone is interacting with, only to find that there's actually no actual individual behind that content. It's just one individual controlling the narrative. So we need to start interacting with profiles. We need to start interrogating credibility. We need to start looking at the intention of that content at the same time. And I think this emphasizes the importance of a multi-stakeholder approach, because civil society can't do it by themselves. Government can't do it by themselves. IEC can't do it by themselves. We need to come together to find a way to ensure that we are combating disinformation, especially knowing that it's a growing, pandemic, not only locally, but also globally. Yeah. So I think this emphasizes the importance of deliberate, digital literacy campaigns throughout, the election period and beyond.